mental health and affordable housing are so deeply interconnected. Finding a secure place to call home is much more than a roof over your head. People who need housing need hope, to have dreams. And people who experience homelessness or lack of income, getting them back on their feet. And so this is where we come through in the Finding Pockets of Sunshine. There's so many different things that can be put together because it is a community-based thing. So there's just a lot of great ideas for the Healing Center.
Because our house is our kingdom. It's what gives us the essence of, I can take on the next day. So that's kind of where it got me. And I questioned, why isn't this sustainable? What are we missing? And the talks I've been having with my sister and mental health wellness, something clicked. It was mental health awareness, advocacy, and alignment. We're all missing to have true sustainability in housing, healthcare, education, and employment. And it all has to start with housing. You have to put people with a roof over their head. Only then can they heal. Only then can they get educated. And only then will employment not be something that we struggle and seek and get debilitated through, but it is a result of all those several steps.
Okay, welcome to the episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. Guys, today I got the power sibling duo. When I met Dr. Monica and Chirag, I was so impressed with the work that they're doing, but more importantly, how they complemented each other in terms of their efforts with mental health and Chirag's efforts in AI, real estate. Talk about a family that does everything. That's why I really wanted to bring them on. So, ladies first, Dr. Monica, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Kent, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here on your affordable housing podcast. And I just love when incredible souls get together, and obviously honored to be here with my brother as well. So super excited and grateful. Thank you.
Oh, I am so pumped. I've been looking, I mean, your schedule is really busy. I've been trying to book you for months. So I feel like our community can feel so grateful, still lucky to have you on today. So, Dr. Monica, for people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and
Yeah.
what are you working on?
Yeah. So my name is Dr. Monica. I am a clinical pharmacist with over 25 years of experience. I am a mental health medical writer, huge mental health and grief advocate. I'm a mom of two teens, and I have recently published my first book that's geared towards mental health. It is a multicultural, multi-generational book. So adults and children benefit from this book.
And what made you write this book?
So I suffered a huge loss in my life in 2011. So I lost my husband to cancer. I was 36 years old. My children were only 3 and 5. I experienced high functioning depression, had to navigate the stormy, waters of grief. And in 2017, something magical happened in my life where I was invited to be a guest speaker on a podcast called Smashing the Stigma. And at that moment, I realized I was stepping into my dharma, which means my purpose. Dharma is a Sanskrit word, come from Hinduism, that means to be of service. And that is when I realized that there's so much more that I need to do here in the work of mental health, coming as a clinical pharmacist background, but more being able to share my own story, my vulnerability, the importance of having conversations on mental health. And that's where I am today, is being a voice, sharing stories, sharing vulnerability, sharing science, and how mental health is the foundation of everything. So that is how my journey began as a mental health advocate.
That's such a it's a really inspirational story for you to see how you carried on and continue to raise your children after such a devastating loss. The reason why I wanted to bring you on is yesterday I was just talking to an architect, big founder of a big architectural firm, and he was doing a lot about building homes for veterans and homeless housing. And the topic we always discussed was sometimes people, when they try to do affordable housing, they just think it's a set it and forget it thing. They build the building, they're like, okay, we did our job. And they forget about all the support that people need to get through some of the hardest times in their lives. They didn't get into a situation overnight, but they need so much love, they need so much care to kind of get them out of that rut. And I'm so glad that your work and your book, you're raising awareness, but more importantly, you're giving people some practical steps to think about how to better their situation.
So I do have to
So,
share that when my husband did pass away, and coming towards the topic of affordable housing, I could no longer afford the house that I lived in. So for that reason, I had to sell that home, move to a different city where I could afford a home, raise my children, put them in public school. So I know what the mental health impact is when all of a sudden you're put in a situation financially and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay my rent? And so that is the reason I wanted to come on your incredible podcast, because I've been in those shoes. I know what it feels like to not be able to own a home anymore, and not know, like, where do I go? Like, how am I going to afford another home? So I think, this is such an important conversation, because I strongly feel that mental health and affordable housing are so deeply interconnected.
yes, that's so true. And I think this is the perfect time. Maybe Chirag, I'm gonna bring you onto the podcast and ask you a few questions. Like, man, who are you and how did you get into this world of real estate and AI and mental health support? Because it seems like you're just a guy that does everything. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, man.
Yeah, so, real estate's always been like in our family. My dad's an architect, so that was kind of where I got understanding of real estate when I was younger. It wasn't something that really opened up until maybe a few years ago, but just through growing up and working in different industries. I worked in the hospitality industry, restaurant, construction, and came to like feel the insides like, hey, my purpose in this world is to help people. I just didn't know how it was going to manifest in such. So I went through my own difficult time. I went through my own mental, I would say, debilitation back in 2023 through a series of events that, again, we could talk about. Just I feel it could take a little bit longer, but I ended up getting hospitalized for 5 days in a behavioral health facility back in early 2023 because of my dependency on alcohol. And, as a man, an Eastern cultured man, it's like we were conditioned to shake it off. It doesn't matter. Get over it. And with that mindset, I was constantly suppressing, and I didn't talk about my problems. I didn't have a person to go to vent, and I turned to alcohol that ended up becoming more of a crutch and something that I relied on to get out of a depressive state, not realizing that alcohol is a downer. And it got to a point where I just broke. I was drinking undercover so no one would know what I was doing. And then one day I got to a point where I was drinking and my wife ended up feeling something wrong and she ended up having my neighbors come and taking me to a behavioral institute. I was half drunk when I went to that place, so I didn't know what I was getting into. But I thank my wife and that situation because it was my rock bottom. I ended up coming out and realizing that corporate America wasn't where I needed to be because the way that the company I was working for, the corporate structure was, yeah, there's HR, but you can't say anything. So again, more types of cages that I'm being put in where to be mentally well, we have to have no cages. We have to feel that way. So when I got out, I got into realizing that, hey, I wanted to be in real estate. I didn't know how, so I invested in some rental properties. And then by God's grace, I came across Sub 2. And Sub 2 led me to a young lady named Jackie. Jackie led me to you. And I knew at that moment my wife works for the housing authority. So I see what she does daily and how she helps a lot of these people just because of what her job entails. Unfortunately, they're limited to the funds. So I'm like, well, I'm getting into real estate and there's people who need help. My purpose started coming back out again. And that's when affordable housing, taking my skill in real estate, not just building $500,000 homes for the people who can afford them, but finding the way, finding the process to provide housing for people who never realized that they could be living in a place that makes them feel whole again, right? Because our house is our kingdom. It's what gives us the essence of I can take on the next day. So that's kind of where it got me. And through the different meetings and conversations I've been having with housing authorities, different organizations, They're in a repetitive cycle. And I question, why isn't this sustainable? What are we missing? And the talks I've been having with my sister and mental health wellness, something clicked. It was mental health awareness, advocacy, and alignment. We're all missing to have true sustainability in housing, healthcare, education, and employment. So that's what brought us together to host our first event. And here we are.
Well, first of all, thank you for being vulnerable because think you kind of hit the nail around the head because I think in certain cultures, men are just told to walk it off. A lot of people, especially from immigrant backgrounds, it's like, hey, toughen up, right? This is what it is. Keep on, put your head down, get to work, and grind it out. And I don't think those teachings necessarily account for, hey, what if that's too much on one extreme? And I love how the relationship between you and your sister have organically evolved to now think about like, hey, how to really solve this all together because you need both sides. It can't just be services on the streets. You need a home. You need a roof over people's heads.
Absolutely.
It can't just be a roof either because you need supportive services. You need the care and the love so that people can feel like there's people rooting for them, cheering for them. So, Dr. Monica, let's come back to you. And I want to bring up the conversation like how did you and Chirag like first start talking about working with each other? Because hey, so I know your siblings, there's a lot of family love, but I'm always curious about how do you let this idea organically evolve and then all of a sudden realize like, hey, we can really do something really special here.
Yeah, so, as Chirag mentioned, after he was discharged from the hospital, I said to him, let's start meditating together. I'm a huge meditator. I meditate for about an hour a day. I'm a huge believer in Western and Eastern approaches to mental health. It's something that has evolved in my own life through mentors. I've gone to some silent retreats. I have like meditation teachers. So it all began with Zoom meditation sessions where I would hop on a Zoom from LA. He's in Florida, and we would do once a week, mindfulness meditations. We would do different topics. It could be gratitude, it could be healing, it could be anxiety. So that's kind of like the foundation of where we kind of really connected again as siblings. Life gets busy, and I think he was going through his own mental health crisis. I was going through my own mental health journey. So there was some distance for a while. We get busy with our children, but I really feel like our passion for mental health and mental well being organically just grew from that moment where I was like, okay, let's introduce you to meditation. And then he started doing meditation for other people in his community, which was really nice because it's like pay it forward. And that's how we can make change is to share all the tools in the toolbox for mental well-being, both Western and Eastern. And then we just started organically having conversations. He was a huge supporter of my book. He was the first one to get on Amazon and buy copies. And so, it was just natural. I cheer you on, you cheer me on. And yeah.
I mean that's so touching, and I love that you were so intentional with your efforts. Even though Chirag was all the way across the country on the other coast, you still found a way to figure out how to connect. And I think that level of love is just something that we need more in this world. So, Chirag, I'm sure the conversation has evolved even more. So, how are you two thinking about integrating everything that you're doing with real estate? What does that look like? What ideas have you guys kind of kicked around and what are you looking forward to executing on?
Well, so you and I met on the ideal of affordable housing, and I want to share with the audience, like the great stuff that Ken has guided me on. Like I wanted to help, like flip houses or renovate houses and put a housing, situation for a single person or a family. And you opened up my mind as like, well, you can do it for groups of people and larger groups of people because here are the strategies. And it's all about neural pathways, right? You spark something for me that makes me think on a bigger scale on real estate. When my sister and I read her book, and in her book, it talks about this the young girl, and she happens to go to a facility or like a center that's a healing center. So as soon as I read that, I said, "Well, we're real estate, we're developing. Let's create this Pockets of Sunshine Healing Center for in reality." So as people are reading this book, they're able to go to a Finding Pockets of Sunshine healing center within their area, virtually, whatever it may be. So now we're bringing the book to life because that book is life. And within our own community that
Yes.
I've been building, because during that time I started a nonprofit, the Pure Soul Foundation, which gets us into the same groups of all these other NPOs. So we've worked with several organizations that have allocated 1,000 square feet within their facility here to be able to launch the Pockets of Sunshine Healing Center. As we create our developments, we would have a location that is a clubhouse, but we would be able to have a Pockets of Sunshine healing program there as well. So by doing that, now we can actually approach a real estate development, a community development, all these mobile and RV parks that we're seeing and we're redeveloping. We know that people that are in those spaces, actually, every single person, according to Dr. Monica, and the way we speak, is every single person will face a mental health deterioration some part in their life, whether it's grief, whether it's a job loss, any of this, all forms of grief. So how do we capture that? How do we put a safety net? Well, you and I know both it's all about community these days, right? It's how are people finding a community, even living wise. You have seniors that are retiring from where they're living in the cold, and they're seeking a community to live in, whether they know that person or not. So we know that the trend is going towards that. If there's no mental health, wellness, or well-being as a foundation, then we're building something on sticks. So that's what really triggered was Dr. Monica came in and she's like, "Hey, this was last November." She's like, "Hey, let's do a reading during Mental Health Month next year. Like, I'll come out. If you have 5 or 10 people, we can do a reading." So as I started talking to different people about this, it was like, well, we're going to host an event. And more people were like, I want to be a part of this. So that 5 to 10 people expanded to around 75 to 80. So now we're bringing people who are doing housing, we're people doing education, healthcare, employment. And that's what created this movement that I have that's incorporating Pockets of Sunshine. And I call it AHI, affordable and attainable housing, healthcare, education, and employment. And it all has to start with housing. You have to put people with a roof over their head. Only then can they heal. Only then can they get educated. And only then will employment not be something that we struggle and seek and get debilitated through, but it is a result of all those several steps.
Yeah, and I love that. This is such a great way to bring together everything. And Dr. Monica, I want to kind of hear from you.
Yeah,
Sometimes people, when we talk about mental health, we just say, "Hey, mental health, yeah, rah rah rah." But sometimes you need tactical steps
absolutely.
to actually help people move along and help them follow a sequence of steps to actually get them on the right path. I understand it starts with housing, but this is such a great idea. Having little pockets of sunshine at multiple developments. This is such a good idea. Like I'm jumping out on my seat right now. I'm like so pumped about this. What do you imagine that environment look like when people they need help and they want to come
Yeah.
to a pocket of sunshine center at a development? Like what do you anticipate the services that they get? How do they get help? What does the process look? Make it real for us.
So, community based mental health resources are so needed when it comes to, community affordable housing. You know, my vision for my book turning into an actual healing center is someone walking in feeling completely lost, right? I've been there. So many people have been there. Where do I go? How do I begin? What's the first path to take? So having the resources, and that includes having specific, social workers, having therapists, having physicians, having individuals who are helping with housing and having support groups where, if someone is experiencing some type of crisis, well, here's a support group that you can join. I always like to say that there is Western and Eastern approaches to mental health. Western being things that we know of. So, having a therapist, a physician, access to medications. nutrition, all of these things play a big factor in our mental well-being. Eastern approaches, the practice of mindfulness, having a meditation center. How do we channel emotions that we're going through? Life is hard. We have heavy emotions. How do we introduce the practice of meditation, the importance of nature, having a beautiful garden where, the sun is shining on you, hence my title of my book, Finding Pockets of Sunshine. We know there's science in the power of nature on our mental well-being.
Yes.
So stepping into just a beautiful garden and just having moments of like, okay, it's hard right now, but I'm going to seek this resource or that resource. And that to me is just the human experience of being of service. And I think just having people know that there's hope, finding, a secure place to call home is much more than a roof over your head. People who need housing need hope. They need to have dreams. And so this is where we come through in the Finding Pockets of Sunshine is we rebuild that hope, rebuild the dreams. And another big thing is getting them back on their feet. People who experience homelessness or, lack of income, getting them resources to get back in the workforce, right? And being able to make money. So there's so many different things that can be, put together in Finding Pockets of Sunshine because it is a community-based thing. And so yeah, so there's just a lot of great ideas for the healing center.
And I really enjoyed listening to the level of detail that you got there. I mean, just from looking at the plants that you have in your background, I was like, oh, she's really into the details. And when you talked about the garden and getting the right angles, maybe to even get more sunshine, natural light into it, like those little things matter and they make a tremendous amount of difference in trying to put a group of people that need so much love and care, and you put them in a dark room in the basement. Like, how would that ever work?
Yeah.
I mean, and you talk about homelessness and loss of income. I mean, sometimes people forget, or there's a certain stigma like, oh, the only people that might suffer are homeless people on the streets. And that's not even the case. Loss of income is huge. I've had friends in LA when they moved there, and just because of how the laws work, they will have to put a security deposit. And if you have $10,000,
Yeah.
but you have to go apply to 3 apartments, and each one requires a $3,000 security deposit. All of a sudden, she was on the streets. I mean,
Yes.
she's living out of her car because she literally did not have enough money
Yeah.
to go apply to another apartment.
Yeah. So
And that's just the working class families.
I live in a community that's, pretty, I would say, middle class, upper class. During COVID, we know that the world faced the largest mental health crisis. There was so much unemployment happening during the pandemic. I've had so many patients come into the pharmacy where I work where families are living in their car because, they've lost their job. They can't afford, they have to choose between, do I spend money on food or do I spend money on renting a hotel room? Or do I spend money on my family's prescriptions? And it's just really like you said, there's this stigma on homelessness, but when you really actually listen to some of these stories and you find out what brought them to the streets, it's heartbreaking. And so, I think it's really important to help break that stigma, give them the resources, let them know that this is not the end for them. And this is where the hope comes in because at any time, this could happen to anybody. And so I think that is one of the biggest things is to give the people this sense of belonging that you still belong. You still belong to this community, regardless of your social, economic status, and just helping them, giving them the resources to get back on their feet.
And I think this was the perfect conversation. And I always tell people that you get to choose who you want to help and how you want to help them. And today, I wanted to bring Dr. Monica and Chirag onto the podcast because this is the perfect example of you getting to choose how you want to help. Dr. Monica wrote a book just to bring awareness, to bring practical steps. I mean, it's reflected and rooted in her story, but this is how you help. You don't have to feel like you're so helpless. Like, you don't have to be a real estate developer to go make a difference. You can just help spread her message. You can, like Chirag said, look for different resources. Go talk to your local governments, go talk to your local housing authorities, and figure out what resources are out there that can help you generate the housing, the roof over the heads for all these people that honestly, it could have been any one of us on the streets. It really could have. Any one of us loses a job or our spouse loses a job too. And now you're both out of job. And guess what? Sometimes life happens
Yeah.
and life might not be fair sometimes. But if you focus, and I'm a big believer in karma, if you focus on helping other people right now, I bet that will help you somewhere along down the line. I don't know in what form or fashion, but I am so confident that you will never say, "Oh, I regretted helping that person." I bet you that's something you will never say. Chirag, I want to bring you on a podcast now and just tell me more, like tactically, what are you doing right now to get more resources, get more roofs over people's head? Like, let's talk about that. What are you doing so that people can learn what steps that they can take in their local communities?
Yeah, so a quick expansion on what Dr. Monica was saying about her vision of a healing center is yes, it's all sorts of healing. So the resources we've been building with the Pure Soul and within our local community, meeting organizations that are already doing the things that we want to do, but have been doing it pretty well. So, for example, a couple of veterans organizations that we connected with that are looking to provide these specific types of mental health resources for veterans. Well, that isn't something we need to recreate. So, through the conversation, through the MOU, we now have the ability to take referrals for veterans and now be able to connect them with these resources that they can provide. Now, from the housing component, well, because our ability to do fix and flips, renovations, there's a lot of homes that are in need of renovation. But as far as rent rates, these days, vouchers, Section 8, funding, they're competitive with market rates. So that way, people aren't left out of good housing. So within counties, within different states, if you're in the nonprofit world or even nonprofits that are willing to work with developers that have a cause, there's always funding to work. So here currently in Pasco County, there is a large disaster relief fund that is going to be allocated specifically to help those in this county. That opens
Mm.
up to so many different things. For example, mental health wellness. I mean, these people lost their homes, they lost this, so they need to capture themselves their mental wellness first before they just go get back into a house and then the hurricane comes back again. Now we're just twice as deep into it, right? So those monies are now allocating resources for us to put a healing center together, as well as providing our construction team to the funds to go and renovate the house. And we're either buying these houses off of people who are just ready to leave, or we're helping those that are in the situation. They haven't gotten much help from their insurance company. They're getting delayed. We have adjusters that are working for, simply as putting a roof over someone's head. There's a ton of roofs that still haven't gotten fixed that are waiting till this next hurricane season are going to demolish them, right? You're talking thousands of roofs across the coast. So we are now in touch with these different organizations that are already getting the referrals through the housing authorities. So your housing authorities are going to be one of the key. Your larger organizations that are have been doing this for years, they don't have the resources for the housing. They don't have the resources for what all these other organizations are doing. And that's when you mentioned AI. So technology in government, nonprofit sector is way behind. Obviously, we know that. So you're talking years before they get what we're getting now. It's the same thing with housing. I'm like, why can't I share this technology to help elevate and accelerate what we're doing? So what we did during our event is we introduced it to a simple technology. If you're familiar with the NFC tap cards, well, we assigned that tap card to an entry form that allows them to check in for the event. But now it now brings it into our database as far as what they do in the community, what the organization is, and on the back end of our or CRM is we're connecting the organizations that have never been connected. The only way they're connecting is going to these events and passing out business cards. Well, since you said that you're in housing or you're in healthcare, well, let's get you connected with someone else that's in healthcare in the same realm that you may have not met. So we're now creating these connections with, and we're putting it as our third part of our AAA, which is obviously awareness, advocacy, and alignment. We're aligning organizations on the back end. And when we host our event, or our workshop or our Zoom, these are the same groups that are coming on, and we're now doing breakout rooms that, yeah, they were connected via email. Maybe they picked up the phone, but oh, hey, we were connected past this past event, and now I can do a breakout room for them in our Zoom and discuss. So these are a few tactics that we're taking to create a community of change. Each one of these organizations for years have been doing the same work within the same geographic location, but not able to expand their organization. It's because it was always a me or a individual organization thing. To be a community of healing, you need a community of change.
This is so good. And I think if people are listening, and well, I know people are listening, but if you want to make an impact, I know sometimes in the world of real estate, we have this limiting mindset like, oh, I can't do anything. I can't make a difference because I don't have enough money or I don't have enough resource. But Chirag and Dr. Monica are showing you exactly, hey, you don't need to have everything figured out. Somebody else might have figured out a few steps ahead of you, and you can now piggyback on what they're doing and support them. Just like with Dr. Monica's book, what Chirag is doing in Pasco County. But you can apply this concept in your local communities. Maybe you have your own nonprofit. I bet there are affordable housing developers out there that would welcome you with open arms and say, hey, please come in, please provide these services to our residents, to our community, because that could be the game changer between one person entering or re-entering a cycle of poverty that they don't want to get back into that loop. They don't want to do that. And it might be you, the person that's listening right now. You're the person that's willing to step up, take the chance. And it honestly, it might be as simple as you just sending a cold email to somebody and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is who I want to help. Do you have room for me? There are so many apartment buildings that could fit a little pocket of sunshine
Yeah.
in their building. So, Dr. Monica, I'm going to come back to you now. And what advice do you have for people? Because I imagine it must have been a journey for you when you thought about, hey, let me write a book, let me try to do something. And it feels like you're climbing Mount Everest
Yeah.
when you're trying to help because you don't know where to start. So, for people that want to get started, like what can they leverage from you and what advice do you have for them?
Absolutely. I think when we talk about making change and making a difference, I always, and this has come from my incredible mentors, is all you have to do is impact one person's life. That's it. That is your purpose. If you can impact one person in your entire lifetime, that is it. And I've always held on to that advice. And I always bring mindfulness into, my way of living. For those of you who don't know what the word mindfulness means, it means just being in the present moment. It's very, very hard to practice mindfulness because we are conditioned to go to the past and worry about the future, right? But when we live in the present moment, the here and the now, that is when you can really say that you're living. And my advice would be one day at a time, one moment at a time, ask for help. I was always ashamed of thinking asking for help was not a sign of bravery, but in fact, it's the opposite. Asking for help is a sign of bravery. Go to the community centers, lean into the resources in your community. When you first take care of I always say that mental health is the foundation of everything. Your mental health is a human right, it is not a luxury. And when we can, probably, I would say, being able to balance our mental well being with the resources that I mentioned earlier, Western and Eastern, then we can take the next step to what is it? What is it that I need to do? So reach out for help. Know that you're enough. Know that these situations don't last forever. I always think about J.K. Rowling. I don't know if you know the story of J.K. Rowling, but when she was writing her Harry Potter series, she was homeless. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. What?
She's from England, and we know that Harry Potter series and the books and the movies are probably one of the most money-making book series or movies in history. And she was rejected over 15, 20 times by different publishing companies, and she experienced homelessness for, I think, 12 months, where I actually listened to one of her podcast episodes and her interviews where she was writing her manuscripts of her book that got rejected multiple times. while she was living on the streets and living on people's couches and living in cars. And that for me was like, wow, she never gave up hope. She was struggling. She has hit rock bottom, but she put her love and passion into something that was just driving her, which was her writing. And so I would also say is don't give up hope. Find that one thing that kind of gives you that fire. It doesn't have to be, writing a book. It could be being of service to somebody else, helping a local homeless shelter or the soup kitchen or something like that. When you help someone else, it does come back to you. So I think when we can be of service to somebody else, that helps us internally as well. It gives us like this fire and spark and hope of there's more to my life than my current life situation.
That is so good. Dr. Monica, like whenever I have days that are hard or tough or something didn't go well, you almost have to catch yourself and say, you know what? Let me just go help somebody
Yeah,
today. Let me just go help one person. And you make it so achievable, right? Helping one person. It could be as simply as holding the door for someone,
absolutely.
giving them a compliment. It's a basic as that. And I feel like a lot of people have never been taught how to ask for help.
Yeah,
And I want to hear your point for this about like, how do you ask for help? Because the phrase I learned recently that has really resonated with me, and it feels low pressure because I was always in a state where I didn't want to ask for help. But I learned this phrase. It's like, hey, what's the chances that you might want to help with this? Or what's the chances you might know someone that wants to get involved with this? It's just simple as what's the chance? It could be as, hey, what's the chance of me getting a discount because I'm trying to use the supplies for my nonprofit?
yeah,
It's as simple as that. Practice it. So curious, Dr. Mark, like, do you have any practical tactical advice like that that people can like learn how to ask for help?
yeah.
Have you seen any tactics that work for you?
Well, I'll speak from my own experience and talking to some of my patients as well. I remember in the earlier days as a single mom, it was hard. It was flippin' hard. And it's like when you're a solo parent, when you are 100% responsible financially, emotionally, parentally for two human beings, and you're working as well, it was exhausting. It's like you don't get a break. So I remember, like, just asking my parents, be like, I need to drop the kids off for a couple days because I need a break. I need help. I would use my friends as a support too. And even my brother and my sister-in-law, I'd be like, hey, can you take the girls for a couple hours? Because I need some Monica time. I need some me time. And that was for me realizing that self-care is so important. It could be like someone offering like, hey, Monica, can I drop off some food to you? Like, and I'll be like, yes, please. Can you drop off 2 dishes to me? And when you have that relationship with a family member or family members or friends, I think you feel safe and you feel like, okay, it's not wrong for me to ask for help. Another thing that
Yes.
I did, I walked into my doctor's office one day and I was like, I need help. I'm stuck. I can't get over this numb feeling. I think I need to go on an antidepressant. So, in the earlier days, I had that stigma. I put that stigma on myself, like, coming as a pharmacist, I was like, oh no, I'm fine. It's okay to feel this numb. And then I realized, I'm like, huh, I think I might need help for medication. And I don't know if I've shared this with you, Kent, but I was asked in a podcast how I was feeling after taking an antidepressant. And I said to that host, I am finding pockets of sunshine after taking Lexapro. So I have this like great relationship with just sharing with my patients that hey, taking an antidepressant 7 years ago today has become the title of my book.
Wow, what a story. Wow. That and I just love your approach of blending Western and Eastern. I'm loving this podcast and I'm loving this conversation because I think not only do people get strategies today, they get inspiration, they get practical advice on how to apply it to their lives. So, Chirag, I'm gonna go to you and I'm gonna wrap up with final statements or advice from Dr. Monica. But Chirag, I think I want to leave one more nugget or one more piece of advice or practical advice that hey, if people want to go look for housing resources or they want to go to the housing authority and ask for, what do you recommend is like the most practical thing that they can do today to go get some resources to put a roof over someone's head? What are your thoughts?
These are all tools to our tool belt because not every tool will work in that situation. So having all these things that she's brought up and I've held on to is what we're putting out there through the Pockets of Sunshine program. But for a housing component, you know, it was I'll give you a small story. So I went to this event this past Saturday, and I was sitting down on a bench just waiting for the kids to it was a kids event. It was called Kids Fest. You know, there were fire trucks and things that they were doing, and I was sitting down just wanted to rest. And it was an empty seat, and this older gentleman and his wife came and happened to sit down. They asked if they could sit down, and I said, "Yeah, I mean, no one's sitting, feel free." There was no harm in it. The old me probably would have been like, "No, their seats are taken, even though no one's going to sit there." Well, we started having this conversation, and my son is selling bracelets like as a small business, and he donates $1 of the $5 sale to the Pure Soul Foundation, and he speaks about it about like, hey, we're towards affordable housing. Well, that conversation opened up this gentleman saying that he needs help with housing. He's in a struggle with housing. So it's very difficult for someone to just say, hey, I need help. I don't know what resources to go to unless they're at the very brink of like it's breaking time. So for advice for those that are looking for a resource, there's obviously your housing authority. You obviously have other organizations that are there locally. But for folks that are like us that are looking to make an impact, talking to your city and county government, anybody, council members, commissioners, chamber of commerce members. These are all people who are committed to bettering the city and the community. They just don't have new resources, creative resources like we do. So that's what's really opened the door up for me is getting the chance to talk to a council member and then them seeing a whole new way of how we can help the community through creative ways really got them to wanting to introduce me to other people. So that's what I suggest is anybody that's looking to make a change, go and find somebody to have one conversation with, then let them know what you're doing. And they're going to see a way to plug you in to what they're doing because it's totally new. And that's why the Pockets of Sunshine program, Dr. Monica's working on her branding, but our idea there is exactly what you said. We're going to have a program that is replicable anywhere in the country, in any community, in any foundation, in any facility that wants to bring impact on mental health wellness, but doesn't know where to start attracting people. So our next step is a youth program, but even for that, those key things are what are going to get people to talk about children saying, I'm not in a great place. I have this going on. I live in a neighborhood that has constant yelling and gunshots. Well, those are signs for us to say, hey, we need to get these kids into a better housing opportunity.
Yes, and I'm loving this through line today of just one step, one conversation, helping one person, and that's all you can do sometimes to make it. You can piece it out into like little chunk-sized tasks that is so achievable that you really can make an impact, progress towards every single day. So, to Monica, I want to come back to you because I want to make sure people can figure out, hey, how do they buy your book and how do they get in touch with you? How do they know more about your story? So, give us some practical call to actions for the community today.
So I am heavily involved on social media. My biggest platform is Instagram. My handle is at Dr. Monica Farm D. My book, Finding Pockets of Sunshine, is available on Amazon. I'm sure you'll probably link those two things in your show notes. I do a lot of podcast interviews. I do medical writing, and all my interviews and publications are also found in the link tree or my link in bio on Instagram. And yeah, so I'm, super interactive as well. If you shoot me a DM, I'm pretty good about responding back within 24 to 48 hours depending on what my schedule is like, but I'm super interactive with all the people that I'm meeting, and I've met some incredible people through social media and the work in the space of mental health, mental well-being, and just branching out into different topics. Like I'm so thrilled and grateful to be talking about affordable housing and how it's interconnected with mental health. So thank you for having me.
Oh, for sure. And I got to ask you maybe two more questions because these things just pop into my head. I really want to cover them. So, Dr. Monica, I want to ask one. Maybe I'll put this on you actually. What questions should I have asked you today that I didn't ask?
Huh. I think you asked me a lot of great questions, but a question that is linked to, your affordable housing podcast would have been, how did you feel in that moment, Dr. Monica, when you had to sell your house and you could no longer afford it? So my answer to that question is I felt low, like I wasn't enough. I felt ashamed. Shame is a huge emotion that takes over our body. And I remember for that moment, probably 6 months, there was a lot of shame, but I was also going through a lot of grief. So there were so many different emotions interlaced. It's a very complex time in my life, but I'd have to say that for that moment in my life, there was a lot of shame.
Thank you for answering that. I think that's a feeling that I hope no one ever has to go through, but I know people are going through today, honestly.
Yeah,
And I think I really hope that people take what you said and do something about it. Because I think sometimes you need a lot of emotional push to drive yourself towards making that change because sometimes it's hard to find motivation. We're all so busy. And then you say, hey, go help one other person. And that helping that one person can feel like it's climbing a whole freaking mountain.
yeah,
But it doesn't have to be, especially when you have folks like Dr. Monica and her brother giving you the resources, giving you the model, and just giving you these one little tactical steps that you can take today. So, Chirag, I'm going to come to you. And this is a question I ask everyone on the podcast, Chirag. And the whole genesis behind this question is people, when I started this podcast 3 years ago, and I told people I wanted to solve for affordable housing, and they said, no way. They said, no way. And I still remember the first month I had 17 views on the podcast. And I'm pretty sure that was just my mom that was just clicking on it. Fast forward today, I get to talk to amazing people like you. But more importantly, I feel that both of you have added two big pieces to the puzzle today. Where hey, it's only a matter of time before we collect all the pieces of the puzzle to solve for affordable housing so that every single working family in the country or in the world can have a safe, decent, quality home to live in. So, Chirag, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, has just been so hard to solve for? And Dr. Monica, you have anything to add? I want you to add into this afterwards.
So you're asking why isn't it solvable? And
Why is it so hard to solve for?
well, I mean, the space I'm looking at it from now, and the feeling, the level of creation, I don't think it is anymore. Before, I believed it was because it's all about the money. People in real estate are, in most cases, like that's why I got into real estate. I was like, yeah, I could do this. And that was the reason I started the nonprofit, was because I was shown that I can make 40, 50, 60K a month on Section 8 housing. But now I'm making that money, and the people that are living there are barely surviving and barely living and able to live. I couldn't live with myself that way. I couldn't be driving a fancy car and then housing people who are barely surviving. So I had to figure out that fix. That's generally what it is. It's we have desires, we have wants, we have needs. We try to figure out how to get there. And we, if we're in real estate, higher dollar value for us, the less amount of time is generally on the higher profit ticket items. And you know, it doesn't have to be. We may have a lens that's all we see, or maybe our mentors or what people are guiding us. And we reach out. Like if I don't know about real estate, I'm going to find a real estate mentor. Most real estate mentors are talking about big dollars, and that's what gets people to buy their program. So I think it's just a vicious cycle, you know, breaking that and seeing that you could still make a great living on affordable housing, but you can put it back in and give people the opportunity to not have to just survive, right? I have a grandiose vision of eliminating and eradicating the words of homelessness, poverty, uneducation, unemployment from future generations' dictionaries. Just like you ask kids, when your daughter gets older and you can ask her about a DVD player, a CD player, she's gonna be like, "What's that?" So why can't her kids or even her say that to the word homelessness? It's very
Yes.
possible.
I
It's
love
very
that.
possible. And that's why this year you're seeing a lot more people spiritually awaken. So they start to look at what they're doing every day as becoming numb to it, right? I could be a real estate investor flipping houses every day, every month. I get to a point where I'm making money and I'm doing this, but I'm numb to something. I haven't figured it out. But why am I unhappy? I could be the richest person, but I'm unhappy. Well, it's because the internal intrinsic value that I seek hasn't been fulfilled. And that's when people are like, well, like I'll give you a quick example before we go, is that I work with a design build firm that does about 25 fix and flips for investors every month. Like they're flipping 25 houses. But she approached me and she's like, I know there's bigger meaning to my work. Like I want to do something with my skill set. I mean, money is great and this and that, but now the bigger I go, the more time is away from my family, the more things that I face. So I want to put that purpose back in. I'm like, that's huge because someone who's doing that much volume doesn't see that right away. So
Oh,
for
I
her to
love
come up
that.
and do that, I mean, this is just more and more people that are like, I have a bigger purpose. I'm going to figure that out. So
I love that. Dr. Monica, what else would you add? Do you have anything to add to why affordable housing is just so hard to solve for, or historically been so hard to solve for?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to, like Chirag said, money. I really believe, and I think this is where my spiritual work comes in, is money is energy. And when we approach money through the sense of energy, then we can live in the means that we have, right? I think cost of living has skyrocketed. I mean, we live in California, you and I, Kent. It's so expensive to live in California. I'm sure it's just as expensive in parts of Florida as well. Um, we need more jobs. We're seeing so many individuals who are still collecting unemployment. They need to get back on their feet, have that sense of self worth by making your own money. Of course, reaching out to these resources to get help. But there's also that sense of like, okay, I'm back at work, getting my feet, back into whatever industry that you're in. And that's where the hope and the dignity comes in, right? And you've also both have mentioned that affordable housing is much more than just having a roof over your head. It's a place where you can hope, you can dream, you can feel safe, right? And that feeling of safety is probably the biggest thing that is the driving force or the lack of when it comes to, being in a home. So there's so many factors, but I really feel like, especially like just, you know, being in different cities, seeing less, homelessness on the streets. I think we're moving in the proper direction. There's definitely a lot of work to be done. But if we infuse, the mental well-being aspect of this and break the shame and the stigma that's also associated with it, then we're going to continue to be on the right path in helping this situation.
Oh,
uh,
this is so
Can't I got
good.
one more thing to add, just one more last thing. You asked the
Go
question,
for
why
it.
hasn't affordable housing been why is it so difficult? It takes us back to that thing I mentioned to you is that true sustainability in affordable housing, healthcare, education, employment will only come because mental health wellness isn't a foundation. So you got someone you put into housing. Well, affordable housing means they have to obviously they have to be able to afford it. But now, do they have the right job? Do they have the right setup? Well, if they get a job and they're not educated correctly, then they're going to struggle at that job and now they're going to go back into that cycle. And if you ask people from 5 to 7 years ago why they don't do section 8 housing, there's a stigma. Oh, they're going to ruin my property. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. So we're now putting those assumptions onto people versus focusing on the mental health wellness component and creating a true sustainability system that affordable housing shouldn't be called affordable housing. It should just called be housing. You know what I mean? So that's where I feel
Yes.
that that answer to your question comes in from everything.
Oh, I'm just so grateful for both of you. I mean, seriously, without people like you putting your effort, your time, your energy, your resources, your relationships, right? I would have never had the home I grew up in. So I appreciate you both so much. And Chirag, we never got your socials, but if people want to find out more about you or follow you, Chirag, where can people follow you?
Yeah, so with social media, it's the real Chirag R Patel on Instagram. I'm not a heavy social media person, but the email to get a hold of me for is executive director at thepure.sol.org, thepuresoul.org, SOL. So best way to get a hold of me, and yeah.
All right. We'll make sure we link all their notes, all their handles, all their books on the show notes below. And I can't thank you both enough for coming on to the podcast today. I appreciate you so much. And I can't wait to bring you back both on at some point.
Thank you for
Oh,
having
they
us. And,
can thank you.
Kent, thank you for the work
Oh,
that you do. And I'm a huge believer in the power of storytelling, the power of our voice, and having your platform for your audience to have these types of conversations. You're doing incredible work. So thank you for having us.
Thank you. I appreciate you both so much.
And Kent, remember, you and I had a conversation. So a lot of this has because of our interactions and our back and forth. So you are doing great work. Keep doing what you're doing. And, you've inspired me to think bigger on helping
Yes.
more people. So appreciate you.
Yes. All right. I love it. And we are out.